Hey, it's your friend from Limitless Confidence, and I'm genuinely so glad you're here. If you clicked on this video today, it tells me something powerful about you. It tells me you're someone who doesn't want to sleepwalk through life. That maybe, just maybe, there's a quiet question stirring inside you right now. Is this really all there is? Maybe you're feeling stuck. Maybe your days blur together, and the person staring back at you in the mirror feels like a stranger. You wonder if it's too late to start again. Or maybe you don't even know what starting again would look like. If any of that sounds like you, breathe, you're in the right place. Because today, we're going to walk through a journey that will help you not just find your purpose, but actually begin living it even if you have no idea where to begin. And here's the truth. Purpose doesn't arrive in a flash of lightning. It doesn't knock on your door with a label and a job title. It whispers. It stirs quietly when you're doing something that makes you forget to check your phone. It lives in those small, sacred moments where you feel more you than you've felt in a long, long time. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with clarity, direction, and a shift in mindset that will help you move not into some grand final destination, but into your next right step. And it starts with this simple idea. You're not stuck. You're just grieving an old version of yourself. Let's talk about what that really means and how to set yourself free. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I feel so stuck, like I'm sinking in emotional quicksand, but I don't even know what I'm stuck in? Yeah, same here. But here's a mind-bending truth. Most of the time, we're not stuck because we don't know where to go. We're stuck because we're still holding on to something that's no longer here. You're not broken. You're grieving. Not grieving a person, but grieving a version of you that no longer fits. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was a construction manager for 17 years. Rugged, proud of his work boots, ran the crew like a ship captain. Then the industry hit a downturn, and suddenly, at 45, he was jobless. For months, he kept saying, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. But what was really happening? Marcus was grieving the version of himself who woke up at 5 a.m. with purpose, the guy who was somebody on site. He wasn't just missing a paycheck, he was missing the identity that paycheck gave him. And here's the dangerous part. When we confuse grief for stagnation, we start blaming ourselves. We say things like, why can't I just move on? But would you ever say that to someone at a funeral? Because we know grief takes time, space, and gentleness. Yet, when it's our own transformation, we expect to skip the funeral and jump straight into a glow-up. Big mistake. See, letting go of who you used to be is emotional heavy lifting. It's peeling off labels that made you feel safe. Teacher, provider, wife, breadwinner. And that process? It's not always inspiring. Sometimes it's ugly cry on a Tuesday afternoon kind of hard. But here's the lesson I want you to walk away with. The moment you stop trying to get unstuck and instead give yourself permission to grieve is the moment momentum starts to return. Because once you name what you're grieving a title, a routine, a season of life, you stop clinging to it in the shadows. You face it, you honor it, and then you can begin to release it. So here's your invitation. Take 10 minutes today. Write down the parts of your old self you miss not to shame yourself, but to acknowledge the goodbye you never gave. That's not weakness. That's growth with a seatbelt on. Now that we've made peace with the past, let's talk about what we don't need moving forward. Spoiler, it's the idea that your life purpose has to be one big thing. Let's bust that myth wide open. So, Let's clear up one of the most damaging lies we've been sold. That you were born with one life purpose, and your job is to figure it out, like it's some cosmic scavenger hunt. Sounds romantic, but also ridiculous. It's like being handed one outfit at birth and being told, "This is it. Wear it forever, even to weddings, even to funerals, even to hot yoga." No, thank you. Here's the truth. Purpose is not a singular destination. It's not just one thing you do forever. It's a series of evolving callings that show up differently in different seasons. Let me introduce you to Denise. Denise spent 12 years as a paramedic. She saved lives for a living talk about purpose. But after an injury, she couldn't do the job anymore. For a while, she spiraled. She kept saying, "That was my purpose. I lost it." But what she hadn't lost was her ability to stay calm under pressure, her compassion, her knack for making people feel safe. Now, Denise works as a crisis counselor for teens. Still, saving lives, just using a different tool set. Same purpose, different vehicle. That's what we get wrong. We tie our purpose to a job title, a degree, a paycheck. But real purpose is deeper. It's about what drives you underneath all that. You might express it as a nurse in your 20s, a parent in your 30s, a community builder in your 40s, a coach in your 50s. And all of that, still you. Still your purpose, just shape-shifting as you grow. Common mistake? Thinking if you don't feel fulfilled at your job right now, you've somehow failed your purpose. Number. It just means that purpose needs room to evolve, and maybe it's asking for a new outlet. Here's a quick reframe. Purpose isn't found. Purpose is built. And you build it with bricks of service, curiosity, and courage. Let go of the pressure to have it all figured out. No more sitting around waiting for the one big thing to knock on your door with a marching band and fireworks. Instead, start asking, what energizes me lately? How could I use that to make someone's life 1% better today? Because purpose rarely shows up on a billboard. It whispers. And sometimes, it's hiding in plain sight. Which brings us to the next piece of this puzzle. What if you're not searching hard enough, but simply not collecting enough? Let's talk about how purpose is discovered through sampling, not searching. Here's a wild idea. Maybe your purpose isn't something you find by looking harder. Maybe it's something you stumble into by living wider. Let me explain. We grow up thinking life purpose is like a soulmate. You either find the one, or you live in spiritual singleness forever. But what if purpose is less like marriage, and more like buffet sampling? You try a little of this, a little of that. Some things you love, some you spit into a napkin. But every taste teaches you something. Purpose comes from sampling, not obsessively searching. Take Ava, for example. Ava was in her 30s, bouncing between jobs: retail, admin assistant, dog walker, part-time barista. She kept saying, "I'm lost. I haven't found my thing." But when we actually looked at her life, there was a pattern. She lit up whenever she got to organize chaos. She was the unofficial event wrangler, the party planner, the go-to person when someone needed order out of a mess. Fast forward a few years, Ava runs her own business, helping small creative teams systemize their workflows. She didn't find that calling in a dream. She collected iTone disorganized office and frantic wedding rehearsal at a time. And here's what most people miss. You can't connect dots you never collected. We're so obsessed with finding the answer, we forget to gather clues. Every job you hate, every odd gig, every random hobby, every volunteer event you almost skipped each one adds a puzzle piece to your bigger picture. Common trap? Waiting for clarity before taking action. But clarity doesn't precede. Action, it follows it. It's like being in a dark room with a flashlight. You don't light up the whole space at once. You take a step, shine a little more. Another step, more light. Same with purpose. So if you're sitting there thinking, but I don't know what I want to do yet, the real question is, what have you already tried? And what did those experiences teach you about what excites you, what drains you, what matters to you? That's your homework. Write a sampling resume, not jobs moments. Moments where you felt alive, curious, useful. Moments where time flew. Chances are, your future is already hidden in your past. It's just been waiting for you to pay attention. And speaking of paying attention, what if you've tried all the sampling stuff, but still feel nothing? Let's talk about what to do when you feel totally numb-band. How to find that spark again. Let's talk about the blah. You know, that quiet, numb, emotionally beige space where nothing feels exciting anymore. You're not in crisis. You're not in chaos. You're just kind of existing. If that's where you are, I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're just burned out. And no, burnout doesn't always look like crying in your car or quitting your job via email. Sometimes it looks like silence. Like meh. I once met a guy named Chris, mid-30s. Great job, steady relationship, decent apartment. From the outside, winning. But when I asked what lights him up, he paused and said, honestly, I don't even remember what I like anymore. And if that hit you in the gut same, because here's the thing. When you spend years performing, producing, and people-pleasing, you slowly lose touch with your own desires. Not because they're gone, but because you stopped listening. It's like a favorite song playing in the background. You just turn the volume down so low, you forgot it was even on. So what do you do when you feel nothing? You don't wait for motivation. You create space for curiosity. Here's a tool I love. The Inner Scan Journaling Method. Quick, simple, and surprisingly revealing. 3 layers. 1. Surface spark. Think childhood to now. What were the small things that made you feel even slightly alive? Yes, doing in notebooks counts. 2. Emotional pull. When was the last time you lost track of time doing something? What emotion did it stir? 3. Impact echo. What's something people thank you for that you didn't even realize was valuable? The point isn't to discover your big calling. It's to notice the tiny pulls. Because passion doesn't always show up like a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's a flicker, a whisper, a quiet urge to bake banana bread or rearrange your bookshelf. And here's the trick. Don't judge it. Follow it. Follow the weird. Follow the random. Follow the, this is probably nothing, but I'll try it anyway. That's what reignites the spark, not pressure, but permission. Common mistake? Waiting to feel ready before you re-engage with life. But readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. Here's a better strategy. Don't ask, what's my passion? Ask, what feels just 2% more alive than what I'm doing right now? That's the spark. And guess what? Even that tiny spark, when you share it with others, can become purpose. Which brings us to the next piece. How do we turn those little bursts of energy into service that actually makes a difference? Let's talk about the power of tiny acts and how they can quietly become your life's most meaningful work. Let's just say it out loud. What if you genuinely hate where you are right now? Like hit snooze 9 times, scream into your steering wheel, fantasize about moving to Bali levels of hate. First of all, you're not alone. We've all been in a job, a relationship, a season of life that feels like emotional constipation. Nothing moves. Everything hurts. But here's the paradox that might just change your life. You can hate where you are and still extract every ounce of wisdom, skill, and growth from it. I know. Doesn't sound sexy, but stay with me. Let me introduce you to Lauren. She was working the front desk at a dental clinic. 8 hours a day of awkward small talk, rescheduling root canals, and trying not to scream every time someone chewed with their mouth open. She despised it. But one day, she decided to stop treating her job like a jail cell and start treating it like a training ground. She started noticing patterns. What made patients feel more at ease? What helped nervous kids calm down? What scripts worked best over the phone? Fast forward 3 years. Lauren is now a customer experience coach for wellness brands. The same skills she hated using are now the foundation of her business. The job didn't change. She did. Here's the mindset shift. Instead of saying, I need to escape this, try, how can I mine this for everything it has to teach me? It doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. But while you're there, get paid to build the toolkit you'll need for your future. Hate retail? Learn people skills. Hate spreadsheets? Sharpen your focus. Hate meetings? Practice communication. And boundary setting. Treat your current situation like a dojo, a practice space. Because even the worst job is still a classroom if you choose to see it that way. Mistake to avoid? Waiting for the perfect job to finally become the version of yourself you want to be. Start becoming that version now, even in a place you don't love. Don't wait to feel passionate to act with purpose. Act with purpose and passion will often follow. Because when you stop resisting your current environment and start extracting value from it, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling powerless. You start feeling prepared. And that's when you realize, maybe what you learned here is exactly what someone else out there needs right now. Which brings us to the next step on this journey. What happens when you take your spark and use it to serve others in the smallest, most beautiful ways? Let's explore the magic of tiny acts of service and how they quietly unlock your biggest transformation. Here's a truth nobody tells you in school. You are allowed to outgrow things, even if they once fit perfectly. We evolve. That's what we're supposed to do. But somehow, we got the idea that changing directions means we're flaky, selfish, or confused. Spoiler alert. It doesn't. It means you're alive. But here's what trips most of us up. It's not the change that scares us. It's the fear of how other people will see that change. Let me tell you about Maria. Maria was a public school teacher for 14 years. She loved it. Until she didn't. The system was draining her. The politics were exhausting. And something inside her kept whispering, "You're meant for something else." But she stayed. For 2 more years. Why? Because in her words, what would my coworkers think? What would my students' parents say? Who am I if I'm not Miss Reynolds, the teacher? Sound familiar? Eventually, she left and started a small educational podcast for parents who felt lost helping their kids learn at home. It grew, and it became her full-time work. Now, she helps thousands without the burnout. Her identity didn't die. It expanded. So, why do we stay stuck? Because we fear disappointing others more than we fear disappointing ourselves. We don't want to look inconsistent. We don't want our high school friends on Facebook to say, "Wait, you're doing what now?" We don't want our LinkedIn to look confused. But here's the truth. Your growth doesn't need to be approved, applauded, or even understood by others. Your life is not a group project. You get to pivot. You get to reimagine. You get to wear more than one title in this lifetime. Accountant and wellness blogger? Do it. Engineer and jazz musician? Let's go. Stay-at-home parent and mobile coffee cart owner? Why not? The most fulfilled people I know didn't ask for permission. They gave it to themselves. Mistake to avoid? Waiting for certainty or a sign to shift gears. Signs rarely show up like billboards. They come in whispers, restlessness, maybe even jealousy. Which leads us to something fascinating. What if that thing you feel envious about isn't shameful, but sacred? Let's talk about why jealousy might be the greatest GPS for your next move. Let's bust another myth. Purpose has to be big, loud, Instagrammable, or else it doesn't count. Wrong. Some of the most powerful purpose you'll ever feel won't happen on a stage or in a boardroom. It'll happen when you're standing in someone's kitchen, helping them wash dishes they were too overwhelmed to face alone. Let me tell you about Jordan. Jordan works as a barista not because he has a deep passion for coffee beans, but because it pays the rent while he figures things out. But Jordan started doing something simple. Every time a customer came in looking exhausted, anxious, or just kind of defeated, he'd write one handwritten note on the coffee cup. "You're doing better than you think. You got this. Today might surprise you." Nothing dramatic. No branding. No TikTok series. Just care. And here's the crazy part. People started coming back not for the coffee, but for the connection. Someone saw them. Someone cared. Somebody served them not just a drink, but hope. Tiny act, huge impact. Because that's the secret most people miss. Purpose doesn't require a platform. It just needs a person on the other side. You don't need to launch a nonprofit. You don't need a GoFundMe or a TED Talk. You just need to ask, how can I make one person's day 1% lighter? Send the text. Hold the door. Compliment the stranger. Sit with your friend who just got dumped and say nothing but, "I'm here." It may not feel life-changing in the moment, but I promise you, every act of service is a breadcrumb trail back to your own purpose. Because when you show up for others, even in small ways, you start to feel reconnected to yourself. And guess what? That's how confidence is built. Not through spotlight moments, but through quiet integrity. Mistake to avoid? Waiting until you have more to give. Number you give, now, with what you do have. Because that giving grows you. And if you're thinking, but I don't know what I'm good at, I don't know what people even need from me, that's okay. That's why we ask, Let's flip the mirror for a second and ask the people who do know us best. What do they see in us that we might be missing in ourselves? Let's explore how to uncover your hidden strengths through the eyes of those who've been quietly watching you shine. Here's something wild. You might be sitting on a gift that everyone around you sees except you. We're often the last people to recognize our own strengths. Why? Because when something comes naturally, we assume it's no big deal. It's like breathing. You don't walk around bragging about it. But guess what? What feels ordinary to you might feel extraordinary to someone else. Let me tell you about Gabe. Gabe was in his late 20s, floating. He had tried coding, teaching, digital marketing. Nothing clicked. One day, during a low moment, his best friend said, "Dude, do you not realize how good you are at making people feel calm in chaos?" Turns out Gabe had always been the go-to during breakups, panic attacks, final exams, family drama. To him, it felt casual. To everyone else, it felt like a superpower. Today, Gabe's a crisis text line coach, training volunteers. Not because he took a fancy course, but because someone reflected back the value he didn't see in himself. Here's your mission. Choose 3 people who know you well, maybe from different parts of life. A friend, a family member, a coworker or mentor. Ask them 3 questions. 1. What's something I do that feels easy to me, but valuable to others? 2. When have you seen me at my best? 3. What do you always rely on me for? And here's the kicker, ask them to be bluntly honest. No fluff. Because sometimes what we brush off as, "that's just me," is the very thing the world needs more of. It might surprise you. It might affirm you. And it might finally put a name to that quiet spark you've felt for years. Common mistake? We try to figure ourselves out in isolation. But purpose isn't built in a vacuum. It's built in community. Other people often hold the missing puzzle piece to your clarity. And yes, it takes a little courage to ask. But you'd be amazed at how much love and insight lives in the people who've been watching your journey all along. So don't be afraid to ask. You might just hear something that unlocks a whole new path. And speaking of unexpected clues, what if the thing you're most jealous of in others is actually pointing you to what's next for you? Let's talk about how envy might be your soul's GPS. Let's talk about that feeling nobody wants to admit they have. Jealousy. Yep, that twinge you get when someone else posts about their dream job, perfect relationship, or new beachside apartment with spontaneous trip vibes, while you're reheating leftover spaghetti in yesterday's hoodie. But here's what most people don't realize. Jealousy isn't always petty. Sometimes it's direction. See, there's a difference between toxic envy and sacred longing. Toxic envy sounds like, "they don't deserve that. Must be nice to have connections. Ugh, so fake." Sacred longing sounds like, "wow, I wish I could do that. That feels like me, if I were brave." That second one? That's your inner compass speaking. Let me tell you about Nina. Nina worked a safe 9 to 5. But every time she saw someone hosting a retreat or speaking on a podcast, she felt this ache, not bitterness, but a pull. She didn't want their life. She wanted to access that version of herself, the one who had something to say, something to share. So, instead of hating on it, she studied her jealousy like a map. She asked, What exactly am I jealous of? What's the emotion underneath that jealousy? Is it pointing toward something I'm suppressing? Eventually, she started a monthly book circle at her local library. Nothing fancy, just a few people, a stack of books, and big conversations. Today, she's a certified group facilitator, running online circles across states. Jealousy wasn't shameful. It was guidance. Try this reframe. Next time you feel that twinge, instead of saying, "Why them?" ask, "What is this feeling trying to teach me about what I want but haven't claimed yet?" Because jealousy is often a mirror, reflecting back the life you secretly crave but haven't given yourself permission to pursue. 2. Mistake to avoid? Shaming yourself for feeling jealous. Emotions aren't enemies. They're messengers. So instead of stuffing that feeling down or pretending it's not there, study it. Trace it. Use it. Because here's the beautiful twist. The people who trigger your envy might be the ones pointing you toward your next evolution. And once you see that clearly, you realize that living your purpose doesn't have to mean going big. Sometimes it means going authentic right where you are, with what you have. Let's wrap this journey by exploring how purpose can be quiet, local, and deeply human, even if no one's watching. Let's get real for a second. We live in a world where it feels like if your purpose isn't on a stage, a podcast, or at least a highly curated Instagram feed, then it somehow doesn't count. But here's the truth, no one's selling you. You don't need a platform to live with purpose. You need presence. You need intention. You need heart. That's it. Your purpose doesn't have to be scalable. It just needs to be felt by someone other than you. Let me tell you about Terrence. Terrence is 62, retired, lives in a small neighborhood in Ohio. No social media, doesn't know what TikTok is, still says the Facebook. Every Saturday morning, Terrence walks his block with a trash bag and gloves. Not paid, not praised, just does it. But it started something. Kids started joining. One neighbor brought donuts. Another printed little "Thanks Terrence" stickers. Now it's a weekly ritual. No brand, no viral hashtag, just impact. Because you don't need an audience to be meaningful. You just need to care enough to act. Purpose isn't about visibility. It's about alignment. Are you doing something even small that reflects your values, your heart, your gifts? Then congratulations. You're already living your purpose. And guess what? Sometimes not having a platform makes your impact even more powerful because it's pure. No performance, no pressure. Just you showing up with love. Common mistake? Waiting until you're ready, qualified, or discovered before living fully. Truth is, you won't feel ready. That's why it's called courage, not convenience. You can live your purpose in your kitchen, in your classroom, in your carpool lane, in your Tuesday morning meeting where you decide to actually listen this time. It's not about going viral. It's about going honest. Because when you live with integrity and intention even, in the quiet corners of your life, people feel it. And it spreads. Quietly, powerfully, unforgettably. So, whether your platform is 1 million followers or just your living room, live like it matters. Because it does. And hey, if this message stirred something in you, even just a little spark, don't let it fade. Feed it. Your next chapter doesn't start with a leap. It starts with a whisper and a choice. Let's go live it on purpose. If this video stirred something in you, even just a quiet, "Yeah," that hit home moment. I want you to know that's not an accident. That's your inner knowing waking up. That's purpose gently tapping your shoulder. So before you move on with your day, I invite you to do one small thing. Drop a comment below. What's one quiet thing you're feeling called to do right now? Big or small, personal or public. Let it live somewhere outside your head. Because when you write it, you own it. And if you know someone who's been feeling lost or stuck, someone who's forgotten how powerful really are, go ahead and share this with them. Not because you're trying to fix them, but because sometimes one honest message lands at exactly the right time. And hey, if this felt like the kind of space you want more of, where purpose isn't pressure, confidence isn't performance, and growth actually feels human, then go ahead and hit that save button, subscribe to Limitless Confidence, and come back anytime you need to remember who you are. Your story's not over. In fact, I think it's just getting good.